Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 117 of the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. I'm Andrew Coates. Through all my travel, I've been a little hit or miss with podcasts, but I've got a lot of guests booked. So the next several weeks should be steady flow, one a week. And I've got my buddy Nick Shaw back. And I was just on Nick's podcast, the RP podcast, which gets a really big listenership. So that was cool. But I realized, well, Nick hasn't been on mine in a while. So let's get you back because a lot's changed. Well, shit, in the last couple of years, you and I have hung out at a couple of events. And if you guys aren't familiar, well, Nick is the CEO and co-founder of Renaissance Periodization, right? Along with his good pal, Mike Israetel. So these guys are doing really cool stuff. And I wanted to actually dig into this stuff. So first of all, it's great to have you back.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for having me on. It's an honor.
Yeah. We talk a lot. So it's kind of funny. We're just like, now you guys get to listen to it. And I realize we haven't actually talked about this. I've mentioned this sort of like as a superficial detail in a few presentations, but you guys are just two guys who like to lift weights and you were training people. And years later, it's Renaissance Periodization, one of the kind of the biggest, most reputable educational vehicles in all of our industry. How the fuck did that happen? Basically, can you explain, the critical inflection points? What was the conversation when you guys decided, well, we can't coach all these people anymore. Let's start hiring other coaches. Let's start creating educational stuff. Because I think this is interesting for coaches who are, well, you get to that cap of what you can physically do and you can keep raising your rates. But I mean, that to a point gets prohibitive. You can start online coaching, but I mean, you end up at the same capped issue with the number of people you can take care of based on your time. So how did that evolve?
Yeah, so I'll give a joke answer first, and then I'll dive into a bit more serious one. When people ask that, the joke answer that I like to give is, hey, I just rode Mike's coattails all the way, baby. That's again, it's kind of a joke. Listen, Mike is brilliant. One of my best friends, I guess. I think in any sort of quote unquote success story, success all depends, right? It's all relative. But is there a hint of luck of anyone along the way? You could probably make a good argument both ways. A little bit of luck, I don't know, maybe. Listen, we went to school together. Him and I got our first jobs together after school in New York City as personal trainers. Wasn't a good use of his time. He went back to get his PhD, and it was actually then that he started writing programs for people online, and I was largely training people in person in New York City, and we just kept referring back and forth a lot to like one another. We're like, why don't we just like make a little small company and it's just all within one thing? That way it's not like, oh, hey, go check out my buddy, and it's always a little weird when you do that. And honestly, that's how I got started. And then we got to a point, like for me, it was, I was having to jet, and I mean walk and take the subway in New York City, but obviously not a jet. If I had a jet, hey, this might be a different story. Maybe I would have kept doing that. But like, I just got to the point where I was getting so worn down of like having to just walk everywhere and subway and all that to like go train someone for, a little bit of money per hour. And I was like, man, like this is just really tough. Like if you're situated in just one spot, everyone comes to you and you can fill up a whole day. Little bit different story, right? It's a bit more attainable. I was just like, I can't keep doing this. And Mike was training people online. He's like, hey, like, you think you can start working with some people online? Like, I need some help. Like, he basically told me, he's like, I can't do the PhD thing. Like, I have too much stuff going on. It's like I can only take a handful of clients. I'm like, dude, yeah, send them my way. That's honestly how it started. And then I think we sort of rode the initial wave of like social media, of Facebook and all that, when like Facebook was actually a thing and people actually enjoyed using it. Now, whatever, right? It's just there. But yeah, so a lot of organic, just did good work, got people results, and people kept inquiring, and we were like, holy crap, like we're probably starting to get to the point where, hey, maybe we need to hire a couple other coaches. And so when we did that, Mike was going to school with a lot of people like in their PhD program, really smart, knew their stuff. And we're like, man, this is easy. Like they can obviously just start coaching them. That was honestly how it started. Like we started bringing on some people like that. So that was maybe like one inflection point, just like, this isn't super scalable, doing the thing in person where you're traveling everywhere. And then online coaching was like, it's better than in person in terms of scalability. Remember, this is all relative. If someone just wanted to train people in person, I mean, dude, you train people in person. Don't get me wrong, it's a great thing. I love doing it, I think you get to a point where you can start to be choosier with who you
Mhm.
train, because early on, you just got to train anyone and everyone because you got to pay the bills. Makes 100% sense. And so like, I'm just speaking from, our experience, right? Like, I love training some of the people. If I still maybe had one or two people, like the people that I really liked, I might still train them, but I'm no longer in New York City.
You'd be like kind
Um,
of what Don Saladino does, where Don has done the big, online scale thing. He ran the gym for 15 years, and now he has a few very high profile celebrity clients that he works with. Some of it's virtual. And that's all he wants to do because he wants to focus all his time and effort on everything else. And to your point about me training in person, everybody comes to see me on my terms, either daytime at Evolve or evenings and weekends, the times that I have in my home studio, which I set up kind of at the start of COVID. And I was able, yeah, and the same thing happened where, you work for a commercial gym, therefore you're getting a much smaller cut of the hourly rate that they're charging for you. And of course, that hourly rate was also significantly smaller when I first started out. So you have to work really, really hard, gain the experience, train a whole broad spectrum of people, figure out what you enjoy. And now I'm in the position where, people, I have to refer most of the inquiries to train with me to other coaches because I can't fulfill them all. Nice problem to have, increase my rates. There's sort of a pace at which you can do that. But a certain type of clientele self-select, they tend to be a bit more affluent, which is also one of the reasons why I try to create a lot of other resources and programs that are either free or, group online things like our Forever Strength program that are a more affordable price point. So that way I can actually do cool stuff for people in all walks of life while having, some of the doctors and lawyers and business owners and people who self-select to want to work with me, and they're more of a stable lifestyle clientele because I don't want to work with bodybuilders, right? It's not my jam. But anyway, back to your story.
Honestly, when we started though, that was our jam. We thought that's what we were gonna do. Mike and I were both like, yeah, we're just gonna be, like a John Meadows, and that would have been awesome. It's like, John's a man, great guy, RIP, just a great guy, and he was a role model for us early on. Someone like, hey, that would be great if we could kind of be like that. And then we started getting into more coaches. And then I guess what happened was we got synced up with Juggernaut Training Systems and Chad Wesley Smith kind of early on. And like they were really blown up at the time. And Chad was like, hey, like we do all these other ebooks. He's like, you guys should think about doing an ebook. So Mike sat down, he wrote that. And then that came out in October of 2014. And that was sort of like light bulb moment number two. First one was, I gotta just stop going all over New York City. This is not, I can't keep doing this. Number two was we did the ebook, and we didn't even sell it through our own website. Funny, like when we launched it, we sold it only through Juggernaut. I don't even know if we had a website at the time. Like maybe we just did everything through PayPal. Like who knows? This is 2014 or whatever. And then the key light bulb moment though was we sold like 1,000 copies or so in like the first week, and we were like, holy cow, like this is really something. So that sort of flipped the switch for us, is like, hey, like how can we maybe do or scale or like create digital products or something like that, because that would really be great. By the way, I'm slightly, can you hear my dog in the background barking?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, I can hear it, and I'm just like, oh boy, I hope that's not coming.
Don't worry about that.
Little French bulldog that was barking in the background. She's just such a ferocious guard dog. Anyways, but yeah, like that was really the light bulb moment of like, okay, this is kind of the future of RP, is what we should do going forward. And then we thought, like, how do we take the online diet coaching process and how do we make it into a product that then we can sell? Because, like you said, not everyone can afford online coaching, just like everyone can't afford in-person training, right? It requires some fluency there. So we thought, well, if we can create something that's a bit more affordable, that might be really cool, because like in the kind of serious lifter space, I would think most people probably aren't like, they're not, doctors and all that stuff. There's people that really like lifting, especially at the more like hardcore level. Maybe that's changed nowadays with the rise of social media and all that. But we were like, well, how do we create this into a product? What if we sold something for like $100? And we always, like, our big thing was, if we could have bought something like that in college, almost certainly we would have, and we would have greatly valued from that. So that's really kind of like what we were trying to do. Lo and behold, February 2015, we started selling those. They did like decent, like when we first launched them. But it was about 3 months later. Like I vividly remember it. People started posting their before and afters on Instagram. Instagram was just kind of on the rise at the time as well. So like we go back to the whole luck element. Is there a little bit of that with social media? Who knows, right? Probably yes, probably no. We can make the argument both ways. But it just was really cool because then people started posting their before and afters and talking about RP very organically. Like we weren't paying any of these folks. And then it just kind of had that little like hockey stick where they really just started to take off because they were really affordable and they worked. And that was just kind of just changed the game for us. So forever changed the trajectory of what RP was going to be moving forward. So that's kind of like the real backstory of it all.
And then obviously as that success grows, you guys have the time, the resources. I mean, for you and Mike to basically kind of step back from just how much pure coaching you're doing, which allows you to continue to create educational resources. I mean, I have at least a couple of RP books on my bookshelf over there. I have the recovery book. I have science. I screw up all these titles, but basically the science of hypertrophy training, which are really good. I mean, a lot of them primarily existed as kind of ebooks. I got audiobooks of you guys. What is it? RP Diet 2.0. Like, I've been digging into your guys' media for a really long time, and I've gone to numerous seminars. And I was at your summit in Vegas, at the Olympia in December, which was a lot of fun. So it's really cool to see. Are there any other things that kind of came later? And again, you're right. There is always an element of luck. There's always a hindsight bias in retelling these stories. There's a survivorship bias because how many people, say a lot of the same sort of things, something didn't break right, something failed, they weren't able to sustain that sort of success, right? So there's a lot of people, we don't talk to the people who didn't make it. So therefore, are the lessons always, perfectly applicable? Well, not necessarily, but I still think there's good stuff in here.
Well, so one thing that I will add, and this was kind of like the joking part of what I said of writing Mike's coattails. So, Mike's a personality and he's a really smart person. So like he's someone where like when you talk about partnerships, our skills and what we were good at and what we enjoy doing complemented each other really well. So like that's something I would really kind of remind people like you're just starting out. Well, we had kind of each other to lean on where like when it came to all the admin tasks and customer service and all that stuff early on, dude, I was on top of it. Like I man, I like never slept. I'm kidding. Of course I slept, but it was like, no, like this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have good customer service, always going to reply to people, just try to treat people really well. And like that went a long way. But meanwhile, Mike's creating all the products in the back end, whereas like he would not have been good at replying to people and being very on top of it. Like that's not his jam. But it was because for me, that's just like kind of how I like to operate. And so like there's something to that. There absolutely is. Our skills perfectly matched. And dude, we just have this great ability, man. I literally spend, probably several hours on the phone every week talking with Mike. And dude, it's just, I'll just speak for myself, but I never get tired of talking to him. And he probably feels the same way because like we can just bounce different ideas off of each other. Dude, I just like the term flow, like are you familiar with it? You just kind of like get in the zone.
Sent me High's book and
Yeah. But
idea.
like I kind of feel like I get in the flow, like when Mike and I are just going and like he's spitballing ideas, I'm throwing out ideas. He's like, oh, I don't know about that one. Like, what do you think of this? And I'm like, yeah, that seems pretty good. But like, what if we did this? And so it's just man, it's a beautiful partnership, and that's definitely played a big role in it. But I guess later on, once we saw the success of the templates, we iterated them a couple times, ended up launching like a version 3.0. But we kind of knew we wanted to get something more app based, and because selling digital products is pretty high margin, we were able to essentially build out an internal development team ourselves. Like we didn't have to go search out VC funding and all that stuff. And yeah, so that eventually led to the app, and that's what we've had since let's call it 2019, which it's been business is never easy. There's just always different struggle points. There's just always like like when you're first starting out, you struggle to get clients. And then when you get clients, it's like, well, now the struggle becomes how do you fulfill everything and customer service and all that. And then maybe you get some systems in place. And that's just like, it's like a different struggle. There's like never a time where things are easy. It's just different kind of struggles or different, lessons and failures and mistakes that you make over time. Just so you kind of just keep going. And it's like a little bit of a shift to more of like a tech company, which has been like a whole new experience in of itself. But that's kind of like, where we're at now in a nutshell.
I want to read this quote because this popped up today and it hit me pretty hard because like I find myself traveling to a lot of these events to be around like my industry friends and like-minded people. Like I've got Mike Dola on right after you for next week's episode, and Mike's a great friend. But this is a quote from Alex Hormozy shared today. He said, "The rarer you are, the rarer the people are who share your perspective. In this way, the greater your success, the fewer people you can share it with." And of course, that made me think of, the people in the industry that we have the same goals and ambitions. Now, I'm bringing, my conference back to Edmonton in 2023, and I've got my buddy Dean Guido here, and Dean was my original co-host with this podcast and a really close friend of mine to this day. You got to meet him at Raise the Bar, where you guys everybody came down for that event in Dallas. But there's a lot of like hardworking, passionate coaches in Edmonton, but I found that by and large, in order to find like minds and people who kind of share a lot of the same ambition is definitely a word. It's been traveling to spend time with different people. It's being in Seattle with Don Saladino and Luca Hocevar and Kelsey and Dennis Heenan a couple of weeks ago, for their event, and more of the same. Like Raise the Bar, we were surrounded by these kind of people that come from all over North America and even further. And again, there is some a matter of luck with you and Mike meeting when you did, and then bringing other people in like Melissa Davis and James Hoffman. And you could look at, oh God, there's plenty of other examples across the industry of that sort of serendipity, whether it's like John Berardi and Phil Caravaggio coming together for precision nutrition, right? And then look at the team that Chad Wesley Smith has had around him in the early days of Juggernaut. You've got Max Aida, your partnership with you guys, guys like Quinn Hennick. I think I'm missing maybe one other key person there, because I haven't traditionally been as tuned in. I've had Quinn on my podcast. I think Quinn is amazing, but I haven't like done a lot of digging into Juggernaut stuff over the years. It's so hard to follow everybody, but you just look around, and I think there's something to this, and it's okay for people to have like just regular normal, hey, I want to coach my clients, I just want to put my head down and just do really well with this and maybe transition out of this career. I've had a really big passion for trying to, this podcast or various other things I've done, share great people through all forms of my media, so that way coaches who actually want to stay in this business can do it long term and evolve to the point where it becomes a really sustainable career outlet, and not just a job, and not something that people are always worried, well, they're 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because they're worried about, all right, where is the next client coming from? They're always living in sort of a state of stress, living the paycheck to paycheck. And a lot of trainers, early in my career, I knew what that felt like. Thankfully, I got to the point where I did well fairly quickly. But I think everybody has at least experienced that at some point in their career, if not still.
100%, man. No, listen, I still remember that as of, man, I said probably 13. Like, dude, I was, I probably had less than 10 clients that I trained. And I was probably a pretty good trainer, but it's just, I didn't know anything about like marketing. And I was probably more like introverted, all these things. It was tough. So absolutely, there's a survivorship bias, but at the same point, we've both been there. So people are listening, like, yeah, like that's kind of where I'm at now. Like, we get it. I think now I would almost say it's a double-edged sword, because it's probably a little bit easier. I think you should absolutely start in person to build up just the rapport, working with all sorts of people, develop those good interpersonal skills. So you kind of have you have to have a little bit of like social proof, where you can go out and say, hey, like I can actually get people results. But like, man, nowadays online coaching is probably the barrier to entry is extremely low. So in that part, it makes it easier to get started, maybe make money online, but also the same part, because it's so easy, it's really watered down. So it's one of those double-edged swords. But if you're just struggling, like, hey, maybe you can flip it and do a little bit online, and maybe it just becomes a little supplemental thing where, you're having trouble paying the bills or whatever, but now you do a little bit online, and like, hey, now you got a little more breathing room. And, guess what? Usually that opens some more doors to, maybe that keeps growing. And then you have the sort of privilege, like we talked about earlier, of getting to be more choosy about who you actually work with, which I think is a real treat.
And I think our industry loves to gatekeep over, you need to, classic examples, you need to be training a minimum of 5 years in person before you've earned the right to go online. First of all, how many sessions a week is that, right? Like, I don't like gatekeepy stuff. And two, we have to now exist in the reality that, especially given all the events of the last few years and the proliferation of social media, that a lot more coaches are going into online coaching earlier in their career. So we have two choices. we can either gatekeep the whole thing and then they're going to ignore us and then go and some person who's never trained in person who sells some sort of bullshit high ticket, here's how to set up your online coaching business. We know there's plenty of those out there too. And those people are going to take their money, and whether or not it actually sets them up properly, and they're going to do it anyway. Right? And I think also the gatekeepers and the people who are frustrated complain about the quote influencers, the people who actually have never coached anybody in person, but grew social media following for other things, and then turn around and offer online coaching. Okay, you know what? You're not going to make those people go away. Let's just not stop even worrying about those people. Let's worry about you in front of you, because we're focused on the wrong things. And I think that the people like you and Mike, especially, and anybody who's in an influential and educational space on the speaking circuit, et cetera, writing for different publications, we have the choice to actually create resources to help coaches do this well, do this with integrity, offer great service earlier in their career, so that way they can add this, hybrid to their coaching, which maybe evens out their income a little bit, which helps them stay in the game longer, which creates a little bit of bandwidth to dive into more educational resources. You go and you read all of the RP books, you can't help but be a really good evidence-based coach. The knowledge base, I mean, still there's a skill of coaching, sure, but it's going to arm you with so much information if you ignored everything else that was out there. And I'll let you add your thoughts to that, and then that point allows me to transition to the next thing I was going to say.
Yeah, well, so in terms of gatekeeping, one thing that I think folks might find really interesting is I think we kind of unintentionally did that at RP for a while, because like people asked us to do a cert for the longest time, but we're like, no, like, we've got RP coaches, like, let's just, make that our thing. But in hindsight, very much like you said, people were going to go looking for those resources anyway. Now, there are certainly some absolutely good ones out there. Precision Nutrition is sort of top of mind.
Jonathan Goodman's Online Trainer Academy, like John
sure, yeah,
training on the floor, right? Like, those are legit.
Yeah, totally. Like there's a number of really good ones out there, but you also saw a number of like maybe not so good ones, or like what is this doing? So like you said, we sort of unintentionally probably hurt ourselves by not doing something like that sooner. Now again, our area of focus is more on building out the app anyways, and the more B2C side. But those resources were being filled because there was a demand for it. We just kind of chose not to go down that road at the time. It's like, what if we could go back in time a few years? Man, it's very much conceivable that we didn't necessarily make the right option. And, it's very fair. So again, that is one of those things where I think we were unintentionally gatekeeping on some of that stuff but at the same side, again, we had the resources, we had the ebooks, and we had all this. That's just maybe not the right way to go about it, because, you go buy an ebook for like $30, you read it, more, but then nothing else really comes with it. Where if you go get a cert, like now you kind of you can throw that in your social media handle, you can add it to your resume. It just gives a little more credibility and all that to that. And, reading an ebook doesn't really get you that. You're not going to read an ebook and go, I read RP Diet 2.0. Like, it's not really going to carry the same weight. You might actually know more, but so yeah, freely will admit that, yeah, maybe we didn't make all the right choices along the way. But again, hindsight's always 2020. You can always go back and do some of that stuff, second guess yourself.
It really ties into where I wanted to take this. So one of the big compliments I've always paid to Renaissance Periodization is you guys have done a wonderful job of serving your community, right? You have a very dedicated, loyal following of coaches that self-select to, your guys' evidence-based approach to everything. They love what you do. They love what Mike does, the rest of the team. And part of this is, do I think you guys niched narrow? Not really, but you didn't try to be everything to everyone. And would it have been consistent with you guys to turn around and try to do something that would have catered to every coach possibly out there of all walks, right? I mean, I would argue that, a lot of the people who probably would have self-selected to RP's nutrition stuff, they're probably far more likely to have gone and done, say, PN level 1 than some fly-by-night bullshit anyway. Now, there's obviously been a lot of demand. You guys keep selling out your RP nutrition coaching cert, right? So you guys are crushing with that. So I guess I was curious as to your thoughts about how that community evolved, any mindset around who you wanted to serve, and where you guys are right now with going forward and what you're focused on, who you want to serve now.
Yeah, man, it's a really great question. It's something that I've really like danced around with a lot. And 2020 was kind of the make or break year for me, although I probably didn't realize it until like 2021. But we started off a bit more niched in like more hardcore circles, like because that was our bread and butter. We were hardcore lifters ourselves, Mike and I, and but a lot of the people we brought on as coaches were a bit more like hardcore nature, competitive. Yeah, you don't go get a school for sports science at a PhD level without being a bit more hardcore in that sense. But we started with like hardcore bodybuilders and like power lifters. Then we got a little bit into weightlifting, and then because of weightlifting, we got into the CrossFit space, which CrossFit's so big that it kind of opened up the doors a little bit. And then we kind of just thought that naturally, like because of CrossFit and being a bit more broad, we're like, well, we can probably go start maybe getting into a bit more like general population. And like that was absolutely the wrong approach, because by doing that, again, this is the old marketing 101. If you're for everyone, you're for no one. And you have to be more specific in who you cater to. And it sort of like took that realization of like us not trying to rock the boats at all. And like, me kind of telling Mike, like, hey man, like, I don't want to say censor is probably not the right word, but like scale back some of the stuff you're saying. Like, don't be Dr. Mike as much as he would want to. And he's gotten a little bit better over that naturally over time. But it kind of just came to the point where I was like, we're doing ourselves a disservice because we're like watering down like what we're great at. Like, this is what we do, for coach, like people that are really into lifting. So like there's a lot of just general consumers out there that don't have anything to do with coaching that are going to be like that. They just like lifting on their spare time. It's awesome. They're like, we're for them. They're for us. And then you got to spot all the coaches, because if you're a coach, you're probably pretty serious about fitness, right? Like, you're probably not just getting into that. I mean, that's my general take on it
We hope
anyways.
so. We hope so.
Hopefully, yes, hopefully. And like, yeah, man, like that's our bread and butter, and that's where we want to focus on. It's like we're coming out with a hypertrophy app. Guess what? Like, I'm gonna walk you through my line of reasoning here. Bear with me, but we're gonna call it the RP hypertrophy app. There's a reason for that. Who are the people that are searching for hypertrophy? Those are the people we want using our app. And there's a lot of people in there. If you know what the word hypertrophy means, we want you. And guess what? Our app is probably going to be very well for you. There's a reason we're not calling it RP General Fitness app. No, because like, here's the funny thing. Like, when you're a coach and you really know yourself, you can help everyone. It doesn't matter. General fitness, higher level sports people, athletes, you know how to serve them all. But when it comes to messaging and marketing, you can't do that. You can't do it all. And here's the thing, and this is a funny example. Hopefully it hits home. That's something I told Mike not too long ago. And it kind of goes back to the whole naming thing here. I'm like, why do you go to Pizza Hut? Andrew, why do you go to Pizza Hut? Assuming they have them in Canada. I assume.
Yeah. Less than we used to. I remember growing up, there was tons of them. And then like
Totally.
the city I'm from, St. John's, there used to be a few. And then all of a sudden there's like where they all go. You go there because you want pizza. You're not going there for chicken wings.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Chicken wings is a great one too. Like, guess what? They sell pasta at Pizza Hut. You can get it if you go there, but it's not the reason you're going there. It's just, it might be on the menu, but it's not like they're advertising. They're not ever advertising pasta. Because then you call it Pasta Hut. Like, you go there because you want pizza. And dude, I remember going there all the time as a kid. They had those like red cups. I'm sure everyone listening that's ever been to Pizza Hut that's around our age, I'm 35. Like, if you went there as a kid, celebrate birthdays or little like, the personal pan pizzas, if you read enough books or whatever. I don't know if that was a thing everywhere, but that was a thing where I grew up. Dude, yes, you went there because pizza. It's awesome. You got the pizza buffet, whatever. But you love that shit. And I know it's getting slightly off topic, but it just is like, there's a reason that we want to be a hypertrophy app. Anyone that is focused on hypertrophy, this app is going to be for you. It's going to be great. And yeah, we didn't call it the general fitness app because it wouldn't make sense. And I'm very adamant on that. I'll freely admit that I've made plenty of mistakes, marketing along the way, but some of it was just a lack of knowledge. And I'm just trying to do my best to brush up on all that stuff, and just very, serious about that change, some of that stuff, making the changes, and just hopefully doing the right thing going forward.
You just made me think of something funny. My mom listens to these podcasts. My family, they sit around and listen to them every week. It's one of the reasons why I want to do them. So hi, Mom. So it reminds me, I forgot about this. When we would I grew up in this little tiny town. There's no pizza place there, but when we would travel, we would often stop at a place. There was a franchise called Pizza Delight back in Newfoundland. But I didn't like pizza as a kid. I only started eating pizza when I was in my late teens in university, early 20s. I had this idea in my head that I didn't like pizza. And Mom will tease you, but I think it was because mostly the pizza we were getting was these craft boxed pizzas. And Mom would cut up what is it, like hot dogs, whatever, and put it on there, whatever. And for me as a kid, that just wasn't an appetizing thought. So I was convinced I didn't like pizza. So anyway, when we would go to these Pizza Delights, I would actually order spaghetti, and I'd forgotten about that. I'm like, yeah, you're right. They do have pasta at these pizza places. Anyway, Mom, you're a wonderful cook. Love you. You're great. But I remember that I didn't grow up liking pizza. Now pizza's okay. All right. So pivot, because we've talked a lot about RP stuff, but you and I, in a lot of our conversations, we've talked about evolution of your own personal brand. You allude heavily to how Mike's this big brand, he's this big personality, quote, riding his coattails, when in fact I'm always very insistent to point out that you yourself have a tremendous amount of what I call career capital that gives you credibility. You are literally the CEO and co-founder of one of the more successful business entities in our fitness space, and a brand that I plug into and promote on a regular basis. You guys had me beta. I'm allowed to say it now because it's out there, but I got to beta test the nutrition certification, which was really cool. So I want to see what your thoughts are, your evolving thoughts on embracing, developing your own brand, getting out, doing more public speaking stuff, which we've talked about behind the scenes. You've written a book, which I think is a massive piece of capital. So where's your head at right now with this stuff?
It's really interesting. So I think social media, I would love your take on this too, if you think I'm on the right track. But I think is a business, social media is only getting tougher because it's all like pay to play. So as a business, it's really tough to get more organic traffic. But it seems to be that, and I'll even go one step further and say most people, they want to follow more of a person and a personality than they do a brand. Like brands can absolutely stand for stuff, but I don't know what's a favorite brand of mine, like let's take Nike. I don't follow Nike on social media. I don't care what they're doing. Like I'll still go buy whatever, some apparel or some shoes. Like you're not. But on the flip side, am I following Michael Jordan? Now, ironically, I'm actually not following Michael Jordan on social media. So this is maybe not a great analogy, but like, I love Michael Jordan. I grew up idolizing him. So it's like the same thing. So I just don't love the idea of self-promotion. And that's, again, I'm just entirely in my own head. Some people are great at it, and more power, kudos to you. Like you yourself are very good at it. I'm really good at helping promote other people, or like promoting RP in general. It just feels weird to me to do it. And I know that I'm wrong on that, but still, it's just this weird thing. And maybe this is something we could dive into, but like you mentioned, you're from a small town too. So I'm from a small town as well, like a couple thousand people, basically. 100 people in my graduating high school class. But like, I kind of always had this, even because I went to school at University of Michigan, it's a pretty big school. And I was always just like, man, I don't know how I stack up because like, I'm from this real small town. And so like, there's probably always this element of that has stuck with me. Even just, despite being, whatever, I'm making air quotes here. I don't know if people could see the video or not, quote unquote successful, because successful. But yeah, just like, there's probably just always a little bit of that like chip on my shoulder too, where I'm like, I don't know. And I'll even go one step beyond that, because this is where it starts to get really fascinating into sort of human psychology. Whereas like, yeah, that's probably all wrong and all that. And like, I know it. And I'm a big fan of, your mindset and all that stuff. But I almost view it as like a positive, because it means that, quote unquote, chip on the shoulder. But I'm never going to stop trying to get better because of that. Like I'm not going to rest, on my laurels or whatever. Like, so again, it's a double-edged sword, of course. But like, for that same reason, I'm probably not very good at self-promotion, is the same reason that behind the scenes, I'm always busting my ass. Like, does that make sense?
It makes sense. And there's something to it. I'm going to explain a concept I think might make a lot of sense for anybody listening. And it's a universal concept in that it's a spotlight effect. We forever live within all of our own insecurities, and we're very attuned to where we came from, all the struggles along the way. It ties into imposter syndrome very closely.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And it also ties into the human nature of how we see and perceive status. We are wired to perceive and interact with people based on their status and status cues. And we will treat people differently based on their perceived status. And it exists within the fitness industry. Now, I encourage coaches to try to set that aside and not think in terms of status. I think there are other ways to, I mean, status can become a byproduct. But here's what's going on. When we see people that we perceive as high status and successful in the industry, we see those cues in the now, and we compare them against our origins, our insecurities, our sense of imposter. Anybody who sees Dr. Mike Gisertel where he is right now doesn't see his origins. Anybody who looks at a guy like Don Saladino, you get into Don's stories. Don did a recent episode with Brett Bartholomew on the art of coaching, and it tells, Don growing up and working as a basically kitchen help, waiting in this this hall that I think his dad or his grandfather might have been involved in. I can't remember the exact specifics, but Don talks a lot about how it taught him a sense of, being of service. And we can look at someone like Don and be like, wow, this guy's super successful, owned a successful gym in Manhattan. He trains Ryan Reynolds and all these other super famous celebrities. Luca Hocevar is another good example. I'm there hanging out with Don and Luca a couple weekends ago. And, I experienced the same thing you are. They become really good friends of mine. But you also hear Luca's origins about how he was, he started training people in the woods in Slovenia, a communist country at the time. And, he wasn't a good public speaker. Nobody works harder at developing skills than Luca. And if we could just teleport back in time and see all of these people that we perceive as being very successful and therefore being high status in their origins, and remember just to humanize them. And yeah, you will occasionally meet someone who maybe, and none of the people I've mentioned do this, but project almost to the point where you can tell they're a little insecure about their status. But I've met people in my travels who do this, and they're almost, for lack of a better word, arrogant about it. There's definitely like an air about them. And those people can sometimes be a little intimidating. But guess what? We're all scared little kids on the inside. We're all still that kid growing up that got picked on and, didn't have a lot of friends, or every stereotype imaginable. And we completely forget that when we see the successful current manifestation, or especially if we see it through the lens of social media, which cherry picks even the most authentic people. You're just seeing the highlights, right? And I know we beat that narrative to death. So I hope everybody listening thinks about this really critically and hears you in how successful you are say these sort of things. Here's me say these sort of things. And it humanizes the people that we look up to and we see as successful, which when you get to interact with them, treat them accordingly. Honestly, great things have happened. Don Saladino tells this story of how we met and how we become friends. And Don literally is begging me to let him help me in various different ways. He's a guy who linked me up with Men's Health. And if you think about this stuff, I think it can take a lot of pressure off and you can just focus on being you. Because I go to these events now and I've got people lining up after I speak to come and talk. And it's the most surreal, weirdest thing possible. But how many coaches are looking at me, thinking about me in a very different light than I perceive myself based on having lived through every insecure experience I've ever had in my life? So take that, and then how does that answer what you asked?
No, I mean, 100%, man. Everyone is just a person. We put people on pedestals sometimes. I try to not really put anyone on a pedestal anymore. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, people I looked up to as a kid. It's like, man, I never got to meet either of them. But they're just people. And they got flaws and faults.
They are both deeply fallible people. I think a lot of people are very forgiving of those flaws. But I mean, holy shit. You keep mentioning Nike, and it's like, first of all, their shoes don't fit my feet right. So I'm not a big Nike person. And I mean, geez, they've had a run of really bad luck with the athletes and the people they've gotten involved with in sponsoring of recent, whether it's Ja or Kyrie or some other guy who's not a basketball player, same sort of thing. And my cat Ozzy's coming to visit. Hi, buddy. But anyway, that's a little off track, but I agree with you. It's like, hey, let's stop deifying and gurifying all these people, because they can fall off their pedestals pretty hard if we think that they're flawless. They're human.
You know what? Yeah. So let's take that one step further, right? There's like, man, there's probably, very few people that know Mike better than I do, right? But like, how many people sort of look up to Mike, and do kind of deify him or whatever from being on the RP YouTube channel, and that's really blowing up and all that stuff. Like, dude, how many people stopped at like the RP booth at the Arnold's and talked to him? And it's just funny because I would never do that to Mike, because Mike to me he's like my brother. He's just like someone that we'll make so many jokes and do all this stuff. And so if I stop and think about it in that light, yeah, it's absolutely the right way to frame it. It's just, he's just a guy. He's got stuff going on too. He's got, he just happens to be, a freaking genius, but like, him and I talk about stuff all the time.
I'm going to flip this. There's an actual kind of counter thought to this too. And I'll use an example. It's kind of like yours. Like for me, like I'm just me. But I've had people who are like engaged followers on social media, really nice people they were going to be in Edmonton. They message, they want to come and like meet and come and get a workout at Evolve. And so I remember one girl, she's really sweet. She, her and her boyfriend came and did a workout, and then she wanted to get a photo together. And my best friend is there working out kind of right next to me. And so my best friend is down like tiger shoes, and like she's just looking up watching this with this like look on her face like, what the actual fuck? And my friend is very good at reminding me, she enjoys keeping me grounded, based on the social media stuff and the public speaking. And I can't remember what book it was, but it's something I did recently. And it talks about how, let's say you go and get to meet someone, anybody listening gets to meet someone that you think, is a hero of yours, or you look up to, or maybe it's a pro athlete, or maybe it's someone else famous, or maybe it's someone in the fitness industry. You go to a conference and you've been liking their stuff for a long time. Well, guess what? It's actually really meaningful. I've met people, first time I met them, I've been following them for years. Mike is a good example. And it's really meaningful to actually meet them. And if we turn it around and are almost like dismissive or like exaggerate the humility of downplaying it, well, okay, I know what we're trying to do, but actually it's really meaningful to the other person to actually get to meet. So don't take that away from them either, because it actually, like, if someone like brushes you off or like makes you feel stupid for actually caring or wanting to come and meet you, it's actually quite diminishing to their experience, because it mattered to them. They came to see you speak at an event or anything along those lines. So, and I mean, obviously you can be a down-to-earth, really nice person, but don't brush it off or diminish it. Even if your ego is kind of like, well, this is a little weird to me, it's really super important to that person, right?
Yeah, it's a good point, man. I mean, obviously they're there for a reason. They came up to say something to you. Yeah, don't diminish it. I mean, just be a normal person. Just treat them like you would like a friend. Like, hey, what's up? Thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate you showing up. Like, this is awesome. Hopefully you got something from it.
The example in the book was, I mean, now we'll scale it to the kind of everyday, the sort of the celebrity, the Hollywood types, the rock stars, of which no one in our industry is of that level of fame or even close, right? We're not getting mobbed walking around on the street. But let's say a famous celebrity, and I think the example in the book was Aziz Ansari. And if anybody knows the book, you can message me. And how people come up to him and want a photo, and then he would turn around and he would wouldn't want to get photos, but he would actually try to have a conversation with them. Now, what he fundamentally misunderstood was the fact that the conversation, the interaction with a famous celebrity wasn't actually what the person really wanted, because to them, there was no, like, if you walked up to The Rock and met him, would you expect you and The Rock would become friends? No. Where's the capital in that? Hey, you get to meet The Rock and you get the photo to be able to say to your friends, the value to you is, hey, I met The Rock, I got a photo with him. That's the capital. So, and this is what the book was trying to explain, how with Aziz, he fundamentally misunderstood what the experience was for the person. It's like, let them take the photo. It's way more meaningful for them to go back and be like, hey, I met this person, so I got a photo with him. And I don't really think it's really kind of what goes on in our industry, but I think for some people, they actually get the photo with Dr. Mike Israetel or some of the other, like Elaine Norton, it is what matters to them. And it's, hopefully it gets people to kind of think about these weird exchanges in a different lens. Right. And then quite frankly, it's fucking okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it's cool. I mean, I still remember like the first time I was ever at I think I was at, I don't know, maybe like CrossFit games or something, walking around, and someone comes up like, hey, are you Nick Shaw? I'm just like, what? Like, yeah, I think so. Yeah. I don't know, maybe I'm the wrong person. I don't know, but yeah, it's really funny. It's really cool though too. Yeah, here's the thing, like I'm sure you get this too. Man, I always really appreciate when people message like, hey, I use RP, it really like changed my life. This is awesome. Dude, that never gets tiring to hear from. And it's a because I think this probably goes back to the whole, imposter syndrome. I'm sure it ties in some way, but like we all have a built-in negativity bias where, if you build a product or, you do something or you make a post and there might be 100 people that say positive things, but there's the one person that says something negative. And I think we tend to gravitate towards that a little bit more. Like the same thing happens with reviews for our app. We'll get, dude, we got, I don't know, probably thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of 5-star reviews. But then you get like the 1-star review and there's like single-minded focus on that. We're like, crap. Like, so we try to look at it objectively and be like, all right, like, does this actually have merit, or this person maybe a little crazy. And again, a lot of times they have a lot of great merit, and we're like, okay, like, cool, this kind of goes on the list as like future things we need to update. But yeah, it's just that, man, the negativity bias is a real thing, and it's just something to kind of stay grounded and just remember when you hear all the positive things, don't dismiss it, because it's good to kind of think of it. And not that you want to pat yourself on the back too much and go back to resting on your laurel, so to speak. But no, it's just it's a cool thing to always to get, and really appreciate it.
I think all of the undercurrent to everything we're talking about is to be of service. Anyone listening, trying to build your career, aspire to the kind of, whatever version of success you think would be most appealing to you, is if you are of service to other people, like you guys started out with, then it just scales, it grows, it'll manifest in whatever way that, you put your time and effort into. Don't seek status, just help people find creative ways to scale and deliver more stuff. That's what I've been doing for years. And, if you get a chance to travel out and interact within the industry, go to some of the things you and I have been speaking at and attending. Do it. It's one of the best things ever. I think a lot of you guys listening have met me in person. If you have, shoot me a message. I want to chat. Just say hi. And you and I are both speaking virtually at the Recovery and Sleep Summit. So that's our friend Nick Lamb, and it's Lambe. Everybody should go follow him. He's the online sleep coach on Instagram. He's a really great friend of mine. He's half of the organizers of Raise the Bar, which I'll be speaking at again next year. And that one is a can't miss. It's literally an unbelievable event. But go follow Nick. And Recovery and Sleep Summit's actually a free event virtually. You guys can sign up for this thing. Totally free. If you want like the recordings for a lifetime, it's like $99 US. But
that's super cheap, man. There's like 50 speakers. There's like $2 per talk.
And one of the things I love about it, there's a really cool cross section of super established pros, and Nick's doing a great job of creating opportunities for like emerging people. Like Eve Guzman is a really good example. Eve's awesome. He's going to be an upcoming guest on this podcast. She's been on my other podcast with Bailey, our Forever Strength podcast. And Eve was one of the speakers at the Real Coaches Summit, my buddy Aram's event, which was unbelievable in Vegas.
Yeah.
Eve was attending Raise the Bar. And there's so many more people like this that ultimately, if you start plugging into these sort of things, it'll drop you into this world. And I started attending these events in 2017. I met Mike Israetel at one, and that was actually here in Edmonton. I traveled to a few. I met a ton of my friends in the industry, like Aluka Hosevar, and I just kept showing up. And then weird shit happened. My social media grew. I was starting to write for a lot of things. And then all of a sudden now I'm getting invited to speak at a lot of these events, which to me is still surreal, but hey, I think it's cool. It's a really cool opportunity to do a lot of good. So guys, everybody listening, please go follow Nick. Nick, what is your Instagram?
At nick.shaw.rp.
Beautiful. Yeah. And go check out more of the RP stuff. If you guys haven't, oh God, I mean, we've talked lots about your guys' resources. This stuff's great. Nick, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate you. And everybody listening, I'm going to jump right into recording with my good friend Mike Dola, who was the architect of Stronger You. And honestly, I think they kind of followed a lot of the same path that you guys did with RP, what Precision Nutrition did. So
yeah, Mike and I actually, we connected at Raise the Bar, and yeah, we just we got on the phone for an hour a couple of weeks ago, man. It's a smart dude, man, knows his stuff. Great
awesome
guy.
human being. I'm glad you guys met. I'm glad you came down. I'm glad I dragged your ass there. All right, thanks guys, and stay tuned for next one.